My wife disappeared at a company party for 27 minutes. I counted every single one. And when she came back smiling like she owned the room, she had no idea I was already sitting across from her boss. If you are the kind of person who believes what goes around comes back around, and trust me, it comes back hard, then you need to stay with me until the very end of the story, because the look on her face when she froze is something I will never forget for the rest of my life. Hit that like button right now. Share this with somebody who needs to hear it. And subscribe so you never miss a single episode of the Karma Diaries. Let's get into it. The party was on a Friday in late October. The kind of night where Charlotte, North Carolina pulls that damp cold up off the pavement and pushes it right through your coat. Renata's company had rented out the ballroom inside a downtown hotel on Tryon Street. The kind of place with chandeliers that cost more than my truck and servers who smile at everything. I had ironed my shirt twice that week because Renata mentioned twice that her director would be there. That was the only reason I came. That and because husbands show up. You show up, you stand beside her. You be the man she introduced people to. That was my job that night. Renata Jose had a way of entering a room that stopped the air for a second. Not loud, not dramatic. Just this thing she carried. Confidence with good posture. She wore a deep burgundy dress, silver earrings, and her hair pressed straight so it moved when she turned her head. She looked the way she looked on our wedding day, when I thought nothing between us could be complicated. I kept one hand at the small of her back as we moved through the lobby. She pressed 2 fingers against my wrist once. Not affectionate, more like a quiet instruction. Stay calm. Stay pleasant. Don't embarrass me here. The ballroom was already full. Tables of people from her office. People who talked with the ease of people who spent more time together than apart. Inside jokes. Shared stories. I had heard the names 100 times, but only knew the faces from photos on her phone. Renata's whole body shifted the second we hit her circle. Shoulders back, chin up, laugh already rising. I stood just outside the ring, nodding on cue, holding a drink I didn't want. Her co-workers folded around her like she was the reason they came. That was when I saw Tobias Crane for the first time in person. I had heard the name plenty. The brilliant one. The one who always had an answer in the meetings she complained about. Tobias was the kind of man who wore a blazer to a party and made it look casual. He had the handshake where he grabs with his right and covers with his left. The political handshake. The one that says, I am charming and I want you to know it. He shook my hand that way. Held it half a second past comfortable. Then he turned to Renata like I had already stopped matching. There she is, he said, and it was not a greeting. It was an announcement, like he was introducing her to herself. Renata laughed in a way I had not heard from her in months. Not the laugh from our couch, not the one after dinner, when something on television got her. This one was lighter, faster, like she was auditioning. Her eyes stayed on his face. She leaned in to hear him over the music. He leaned in too, and I caught his cologne from where I was standing. Something expensive and deliberate. I stepped closer. The natural move. Husband spot. The space beside her that was mine. But Renata's hand left mine without drama, without a look, without anything. Just released. Like she forgot it was connected to a person. I'm going to say hi to a few people, she said, already in motion. To whom? The words came out of my mouth late and landed on nobody. She was already turning, shoulders opening toward Tobias. The group pulling her like she had always belonged to them more than she had ever belonged to me. A woman in a gold blouse materialized at my elbow. You must be Renata's husband. Yes. Do you work downtown too? Sometimes. Polite lies. The kind you tell. So the conversation ends before it starts. Across the room, Renata tilted her head back when Tobias said something. Her hand went to his forearm, quick like punctuation, and he grinned the way a man grins when he believes he's already won something. I was not angry yet. I was watching. There's a version of a man who explodes at parties and becomes a story everyone tells Monday morning. I had no interest in being that version. There is something nobody tells you about being in a room full of strangers at your wife's work party. You become furniture. People walk around you. They smile at you the way they smile at a potted plant near the door. Acknowledgement without investment. I stood near the bar with a glass of water, and I watched Renata the way you watch whether you can feel changing. She was not just laughing with Tobias. She was angled toward him, shoulders pointed his direction, eyes that did not once sweep the room looking for where I had gone. I know what distance looks like in a marriage because I felt it building the last 8 months, like water rising 1 inch at a time. The late evenings when she came home, already tired of talking. The weekends where she kept her phone screen away from me, reflexively, like it was muscle memory. The compliments had stopped and then started again but felt rehearsed, like she was overcorrecting something she was afraid I would notice. I noticed. I just had not said it out loud, because saying it would make it real, and real was something I was not ready to hold. Tobias said something in Renata's ear, not loud room whispering, actually close, deliberate, his mouth near her ear like he had done it before and expected to do it again. She pulled back, smiling, chin dropped, drink raised to cover her expression. Then her eyes moved across the room, not to find me, past me, toward the far left side of the ballroom, near the kitchen corridor. There was a door there, plain, no signage except a small metal placard. Staff access, the kind of door nobody uses at a party, unless they plan to. She excused herself from the group easy, casual, like she was stepping to check on something quick. Tobias waited. Not immediately. He gave it a beat, maybe 12 seconds, then said something to the person nearest him and turned in the same direction. The 12 seconds were intentional. They were the kind of 12 seconds a person who has done something before builds in, because they have learned that the gap is what provides the explanation if someone is watching. I was watching. The impulse hit me like a temperature change. Go over there, push that door open, force the moment into the light. I did not move. I picked up a fresh drink from a passing tray, something dark, and I held it the way you hold a prop. My hands needed to be doing something so nobody in the room could read them. A man named Gerald from her accounting team found me near the bar and started talking about traffic on I-77. I answered him. I kept my face level. I let him talk, and I counted. Gerald moved on. A woman from her marketing department asked how long Renata and I had been married. 6 years, I said. Oh, she's such a star. I agreed, because disagreeing would have cost me more than agreeing. My eyes stayed on that door the whole time. Not obvious, not staring, just the present. The way you check a clock, without lifting your whole head. People rotated around me. Conversations started and ended. The music changed twice. The door did not open. I counted the minutes the way you count something you cannot stop and cannot speed up. 5 minutes. Then 10. A couple near the ice sculpture laughed loud enough to turn heads. Somebody announced a raffle. A man with a lanyard asked me if I had tried the stuffed mushrooms. 15 minutes. The ballroom kept moving around me like it had no idea anything was different about the air near that door. 20. I set my drink on a high-top table and breathed through my nose. At 27 minutes, the door swung open and Renata stepped out first. She moved with a looseness she had not had earlier in the evening. Easy, unhurried, the walk of someone who feels untouchable. Her hair was not ruined, just slightly off, one pin doing a different job than where it started. Her lipstick had shifted. Not gone, just no longer exactly where it had been applied. She was almost smiling to herself, a private thing, the tail end of something she had not finished enjoying. Tobias followed 11 seconds later and adjusted his jacket lapel without looking down, which told me he had practiced that gesture enough that it was automatic. Renata's eyes found mine across the room, and she did not flinch. Not a flicker. No adjustment in her face. No quick recalibration. She just looked at me the way you look at something that is exactly where you expected it to be. Hey! She came right back into my space, her hand brushing my arm. Why'd you drift off? I stared at her for 2 seconds, longer than a normal response would require. I didn't drift, I said. She laughed, low, dismissive. Come here. And then she tried to kiss me. Not romantic. A quick press. The kind that is more about checking a box than wanting contact. I turned my head just enough. The kiss landed near the corner of my jaw instead of my mouth. Her expression tightened for less than a second. A micro flicker, annoyance dressed as confusion. and then she smoothed it back over. "What's your problem?" she asked, still smiling, because we were in a room full of her colleagues, and smiling was the only version of this conversation she was willing to have right now. "No problem," I said. "Let's go." Renata blinked. She had been expecting the other version of me, the one who would either confront or comply. I was doing neither. She hooked her arm through mine, the way you grab something you are not sure is still yours, and she walked us back into the group like the last 30 minutes had been a commercial break. She made small talk. She laughed at the right moments. She introduced me to two people I had already met. I answered questions and smiled and let the party finish itself around me. My mind was not in that ballroom. It was back at that door, counting the seconds and deciding what kind of man I was going to be about it. We drove home mostly quiet. Renata had her shoes off before we got to the front door of our house on Pemberton Road, a street in a neighborhood off South Boulevard where the houses are close enough that you can hear your neighbor's television through the wall in winter. She hung her dress on the back of the closet door with the care of someone treating an alibi gently. Then she kissed the air beside my face, the second one that landed nowhere, and told me not to stay up too late. I sat in the living room with the lamp on and the television off for a long time, not angry, not falling apart, just thinking. Our house at night has its own sounds. The refrigerator cycle, the heat kicking on through the vent in the hallway, the way the second stair from the bottom creaks a little when the temperature drops. I know every one of those sounds the way you know a place you have lived in long enough to stop noticing. That night, I heard all of them again, fresh, like I was being introduced to the house from the beginning. I was in the kitchen, filling a glass when a knock came. 3 short taps, quiet. The kind of knock from someone who is not sure they should be knocking. I opened the front door and there was a woman I recognized from a party. She had been near the outer edge of Renata's circle most of the evening, holding a glass with both hands. The kind of person who was at a party, but not fully in it. Her name was Priya Nair. She worked in HR at Renata's company. She was standing on my porch in a dark coat, hair pulled back, face arranged into an expression that was trying very hard to look calm. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know this is strange." "It is," I said. "What's going on?" She looked past me into the house like she was checking for something. "She shouldn't have done that," Priya said. "Not like that. Not in front of everyone who was paying attention." I kept my voice flat. "Done what?" Priya pulled her phone out with both hands. "I wasn't filming to spy. I want you to understand that. Tobias has been a problem for a long time. Complaints that go nowhere. HR up the ladder keeps saying there's nothing concrete. So I started documenting him." She unlocked the phone and held it out. "I caught more than I expected," she said, "and I couldn't sit on it. You have a right to know what I have." I took the phone. The video was shot from an angle that looked like she had been recording the party decor, the kind of cover people use when they're filming something they know they should not be filming. The frame caught the staff door from the side, Renata moving through it, Tobias 11 seconds behind her. They stopped just inside, half-turned, close enough that the frame caught both faces. Renata's hand went to his collar, like she had done it before. He leaned in, the ambient music thumped. Then the audio cleared for one line, one sentence, in Renata's voice, warm and a little amused. "He won't even notice." She said it like a compliment to herself, like my loyalty was something she had tested and found dependable enough to use against me. 27 minutes with another man was easy because she had done the math on me and came up confident. I watched the video loop once. Then I handed the phone back. "Is this saved somewhere?" I asked. "Yes," Priya said. "And there's more." I didn't send it because I didn't know how far to take this. "Send it all," I said. "To me?" She nodded. "Okay." Then she said, "I don't know why I'm here exactly. I keep telling myself it's about Tobias." She stopped. "Honestly, it's because you were standing there the whole night alone, and you had that look people get when they already know, but can't prove it yet. And that's a terrible look to carry." She stepped back off the porch. "I'm sorry. I really am." I closed the door, locked it. I stood in my living room with my hands at my sides and understood that I was no longer guessing. Guessing was finished. What I had now was different. What I had now was still Morning came in through the bedroom curtains, and Renata was already in the kitchen when I got up. She was wearing one of my old Howard University shirts, oversized, faded at the collar, and she moved through the kitchen the way she moved when she felt safe. Cabinet open, mug down. The coffee machine started with the ease of someone who had no idea the floor had shifted under her. Morning, she said, bright. She did not ask where I had gone the night before. She did not ask why I had been quiet. She poured coffee and leaned against the counter and said, I feel like I was hit by a bus. Yeah, I said. Too much champagne, she said. I barely remember the back half of the night. Honestly, it's a little embarrassing. She laughed, like embarrassment was something light, like memory gaps were just something that happened at parties. She came over and touched my shoulder. If I was off last night, I'm sorry. You know how those things get. I looked at her. You don't remember leaving my side? She shook her head, wide-eyed. Not really, no. I remember the speeches and talking, and then it kind of blurs. Why? No reason, I said. Just asking. Her phone buzzed on the counter. One vibration. Renata glanced at the screen in the morning version of her, the easy, soft, still in my shirt version. Pulled back behind something careful. Just for a second. Just long enough. She turned the phone over. Work. I asked. She said. Too fast. I set my mug down. Priya doesn't usually message this early. I said. Renata's posture went still. Not frozen. Still. The kind of still that happens when someone is making a quick decision. Who? Priya Nair, I said. From your HR team. Renata put the phone against her chest. Her jaw moved once before her mouth opened. Why are you saying her name to me? Because her name is in your notifications, I said. And you flipped the phone before I could see it. She forced a laugh. The wrong laugh. The one that comes out when a real laugh would give something away. I don't know what you think is happening, she said. I did not answer. Silence, when you let it sit long enough, does something to a room that words cannot. Renata felt it. Her eyes went to her phone. Then back to me. Something behind her face recalculated. I'm going to ask you something. I said, I want you to take your time with it. She swallowed. Okay. When you left my side last night, I said, where did you go? Renata's mouth opened. I told you. Not the bathroom. I said, the staff door. Left side of the ballroom, near the corridor. That door. She shook her head, arms folding. You're doing this paranoid thing. I see it happening. 27 minutes, I said. I counted. Her face changed. Not dramatically. Quietly, the way the color changes in wood when water gets into it. You're making things up, she said, but the volume had shifted. Your hair was different when you came back. I said, one pin. Your lipstick moved. Okay, this is insane, she said, louder now, reaching for the story where I was a problem. You're standing in my kitchen acting like, give me your phone. I said. The room went quiet. Not the quiet before she answered. The quiet while she decided whether to pretend she had not heard me. What? She said. Your phone. I said, hand it to me. Renata pulled it closer to her body like a reflex, like she had rehearsed this moment without knowing she was rehearsing it. No, she said. One word. Clean and immediate. And there it was. A clean phone does not get held against the chest. A clean phone gets tossed across the counter because there is nothing on it that costs anything. What she handed me instead was the shape of the answer I needed. Why not? I asked. Because you don't get to control me, she said, voice climbing toward the version of this fight where I was the villain. Because you are being paranoid and irrational, and I don't have to perform for you. I stepped back from the counter. Not aggressive. Just away. Got it, I said quietly. That's your answer. I turned and walked out of the kitchen. She followed me into the living room. She stood in the doorway with her arms at her sides and her coffee in one hand like she owned the room, and I was a thing in it that needed to be managed. Are you done? She asked. I picked up my phone from a coffee table. Priya had sent everything. 2 videos. A screenshot of a text thread between Renata and Tobias that went back 6 weeks. I tapped play on the second video and turned the screen toward Renata. The living room filled with the muffled ballroom music and the grainy shot of the staff door corridor. Renata appeared in the frame. Then Tobias, her hand to his collar, his face closed. Then Renata's voice, her actual voice, in that warm, amused register she used when she was comfortable, said clearly, "He won't even notice." Renata flinched like the floor had dropped 2 inches. I let it loop once. Then I stopped it. The silence after was the loudest thing in the room. Her eyes went wet immediately, fast, like she kept them ready. "Oh, God," she whispered. Listen, that looks terrible." "It is terrible," I said. She shook her head hard. I was drunk. Tobias was being. He kept pushing and I got caught up and I was being stupid. "You went with him behind the door," I said. 27 minutes. Her breath hitched. She stepped toward me with her hands, open like openness would change the math. "Nothing happened," she said. "I swear to you, nothing physical happened there." I looked at her. That's not what I asked. Her mouth trembled. She went for the softer frame, the one about distance and loneliness and feeling invisible. "You've been somewhere else for months," she said. "You come home, and you're present, but you're not there." Tobias saw me. He paid attention. He made me feel like I was somebody worth noticing. I finished it for her. "So you tested it?" She went very still. "What?" "The second video." I said, "Priya caught more than one clip. There's audio from inside the corridor." You said, and I'm going to quote you exactly, "I want to see if he notices." Renata's face went through 4 different expressions in about 2 seconds and landed on none of them. That was not what I meant by that." "What did you mean?" I asked. She could not answer, because the honest answer was that she had walked into that corridor with curiosity, not accident. She had wanted to know whether I was still paying enough attention to her to feel it. She had run a test, and she had done it with another man's hands on her collar. "I wasn't going to leave you," she said. "I want you to know that. This was not me planning something. It was stupid, and I am sorry, and I do not know how many ways I can say that." I sat back. "You wanted to know if I would notice," I said. I noticed at minute 3. I counted to 27. I stood in that room smiling at people I didn't know while my wife was behind the door with a man who shook my hand earlier that night. "And when you came back out, you tried to kiss me like I was a box to check." She looked at me like I had just shown her something she was not prepared to see in herself. "Please," she said. The word came out stripped of everything. No strategy in it. Just the raw sound of someone who understood that the usual routes were closed. "Not yet," I said. I stood up. "I have a meeting." Renata stared at me. "What meeting?" "It's Saturday morning." "With your HR director," I said. "I called him this morning before you woke up. His name is Warren Faust, and he asked me to come in." Renata's face went white under her skin. "About what?" "About Tobias Crane," I said, "and about the documentation Priya Nair has been building for the last 4 months." I want to describe what happened when I pulled into the parking garage under Renata's company building on that Saturday morning. It was the kind of quiet that downtown Charlotte gets on a weekend. A few cars, a security desk with 1 guard, the hum of the elevator. Warren Faust met me in the lobby. He was a compact man in his late 50s with a gray cardigan and reading glasses on a lanyard. He shook my hand once firm and did not smile. He had already spoken to Priya. He had already watched both videos. He had already pulled Tobias Crane's HR file, which was apparently a document with more entries than Warren had seen from a single employee in under 2 years. We sat at a conference table on the 4th floor for 40 minutes. Warren asked me to walk him through what I observed at the party. I told him exactly what I had seen, in the order I had seen it, with the times attached. He wrote notes by hand on a yellow legal pad. At one point, he set his pen down and said, "Your wife holds a senior account manager position. She was being considered for a director role that opens in January." I told him I did not know that. He nodded. "She's talented," he said. "That's not the issue." I said I understood. He said the company took a particular position on relationships between employees when one party was in consideration for a role that would put them in authority over the other. I said I understood that too. I drove home after the meeting, and Renata was sitting on the couch with her knees pulled up and her phone face down in her lap. She had changed out of my shirt and into her own clothes, which felt meaningful in a way I could not have explained. She looked up when I came in. "How long have you been planning that?" she asked. "Since about 3 in the morning," I said, right after Priya left. Renata pressed her lips together. "What did Warren say?" "That's between me and Warren," I said. "I went to the kitchen, made coffee, and brought her a cup anyway." She looked at it for a second before she took it. "Are you trying to destroy my career?" she asked. Her voice was not accusatory. It was genuinely asking. I looked at her. "I didn't make the video," I said. "I didn't put your hands on his collar. I didn't say what you said into a room that someone was recording. I went to Warren because Priya went to me, because Tobias Crane has a history in that office that apparently everyone in your company already knows about and nobody was dealing with. I brought documentation of a pattern. What Warren does with that involves you because you made choices that put you in the middle of it." Renata looked at her coffee. She did not say anything. Monday came the way Monday always comes, without asking whether you are ready. Renata left for work at her normal time. I watched her back out of the driveway from the living room window. She had dark circles, and her hair was in a bun, and she drove slower than she usually did. I did not feel good about that. I want to be clear about that. Watching someone you spent 6 years building a life with walk into a consequence you helped set in motion is not satisfying. It is heavy in a way that does not come with any of the emotions television tells you it should. It just sits. She called me from her car at 11:43 that morning. "Tobias was placed on administrative leave," she said. "Warren pulled me in and told me the director's consideration has been paused pending a review." Her voice was flat. Not crying. Just flat, the way voices get when the adrenaline is gone, and what is left is just the shape of what happened. "I know," I said. "Warren called me this morning." Silence on the line. Then, "Did you ask him to pause my promotion?" "No," I said. "I asked him to deal with the documentation Priya had. The rest is her decision." Another silence. "Okay," she said, and she hung up. We did not fight that week. That surprised me. I had expected a version of Renata, who defends herself loudly, who reframes things until they fit the shape she needs them to take. Instead, she came home from work each day and cooked dinner without being asked and left my portion cover on the stove on the 2 nights I stayed late. We talked about ordinary things, a plumbing issue in the second bathroom, a card I needed to send my mother for her birthday. The affair conversation did not reopen. It just sat between us like a piece of furniture. We had both agreed to walk around. She brought it up herself on the following Thursday. We were at the kitchen table, and she set down her fork and said, "I need to tell you something that I should have said the morning after." I waited. "I wasn't drunk," she said. Not the way I said. "I had 2 glasses, and I remember everything." I nodded. She looked at the table. "I wanted to feel wanted by someone who wasn't already used to wanting me. That's the most honest version of it I have. And I know how that sounds." She looked up. "I know it's not an excuse. I'm not handing it to you as one. I just needed you to have the real version instead of the one I kept trying to give you." I sat with that for a moment. "I appreciate that," I said. "It doesn't fix it, but I appreciate it." We went to counsel the following week, a woman named Dr. Patricia Webb, whose office was on the 3rd floor of a building on Providence Road. The kind of office with a white noise machine outside the door and a box of tissues on an end table that nobody admits they plan to use. Renata held her hands in her lap the whole first session and answered everything directly and without performance. No tears, no deflection. She answered like someone who had made a decision to be accurate, even when accuracy was uncomfortable. I did not know whether the marriage was going to survive what had happened. I still do not know. What I know is that I did not collapse under it, and that matters to me. Tobias Crane resigned from the company 6 weeks after the party. Priya Nair was promoted into a newly created position overseeing internal conduct policy. I found that out from Renata, who told me without being asked, in the same flat tone she had used on the phone from the parking garage. The director role, Renata, had been considered for was filled by someone from the Atlanta office. She did not get it. She took that quietly, The way you take something you understand you were partly responsible for losing. She did not blame me out loud for it. I think she understood that out loud blame would have been the last thing she could say to me. 3 months after the party on Tryon Street, I was sitting in Dr. Webb's office alone. Renata had an evening meeting and could not make it, and Dr. Webb asked me what I was most afraid of going forward. I thought about it for a minute. I said that I would decide to stay and spend the rest of my life waiting for the second shoe. She wrote something. And what are you most hopeful about? I said that I counted to 27 instead of walking through the door, that I sat down instead of blowing the room up, that I still know who I am when things get ugly. She nodded. That's not a small thing, she said. No, I said, it isn't. I did not walk out of that marriage the night of the party. I did not blow up a ballroom or send text to her whole contact list, or do any of the things that feel satisfying to imagine and hollow to actually do. What I did was stay still, collect the truth when the truth came looking for me, and carry in a direction that let the consequences find the people who had earned them. Renata is still in the house on Pemberton Road. I am still in it too. Whether we are in it together in a year is a question neither of us can answer right now, and I have learned to be okay with not knowing. Some things take time to become clear, and some lessons cost you the one thing you thought you could afford to lose. If you made it this far, you already know this story was never just about a party. It was about what a man does when everything he thought he knew about the person beside him turns out to be something he built alone. It was about keeping your hand steady when every instinct in you is screaming. The moment she walked back into that ballroom smiling, she had no idea what was already sitting in that conference room waiting for her. Karma does not announce itself. It just arrived. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something real, do me a favor right now. Hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it today, and subscribe to the Karma Diaries so you never miss a story. Because the next episode makes this one feel like a warm-up. I'm Uncle Sammy, and I'll see you in the next one. The end.